Sweet.
We're live.
What is going on, guys? Can we just get this out of the way that I said Adeline?
Well, I registered it as a secondary business, so now we own it.
I was like, as I finished the podcast, I was like, wait, it's not Adeline, it's Aldine. Why did I say that? And like, I immediately knew. And I think Doug was in the other room and he heard me and he was like, Nick, it's not Adeline. I'm like, I know it's not Adeline. So this is my public apology to you guys.
All good, man.
Brutal.
Brutal.
You're not the first.
No.
I'm sure you won't be the last.
Well, that was the first time for Adeline, but usually it happened in the past a lot. People would reach out and be like, who's Clark and who's Aldine?
So what's the meaning behind the name? Have we talked about
It's very sweet. It's very sweet.
So actually the meaning behind the name is they're the two crossroads that Michael and I lived on when we met. So Michael lived on Clark Street and I lived on Aldine Street. And we wanted to have a name that meant everything to us, but nothing to anybody else. And that's kind of how we landed on it. And then those streets technically don't intersect. In Chicago, they changed Clark goes straight across and then Aldine turns into school. And so that is where our paths intersect. And now we name all of our projects that way off of two streets.
That's why the logo back here looks like a street sign.
Got it. Why are you guys the cutest ever?
Oh, thanks, bro.
We work at the eye.
It sounded like Tyler, you must have already knew that, but I did.
Yeah, everyone knows that, man.
You know, you should have prepped me.
Sorry,
no,
dude.
I'm glad you just told that. That's awesome. It's it's funny. We have one of those, like, I feel like it's one of those things you buy on Etsy in our living room that has our two last names as street signs that they intersect.
Yep.
And two people bought them for our wedding, and it's funny, they have them reversed. So like my name's on top on one, and then the other one, my wife's name is on top on that one. And it's funny, like, because they're from like opposite sides of the family when we got that gift. So that's cool.
Love it.
Yep.
What have you guys been up to?
Wrapping up the year, planning for next year. I mean, since you already mentioned it on the previous pod, we were in Minnesota. That's where we met Tyler for the first time. We spoke at BizCom and then immediately jumped on a plane to go to Huntington Beach for the second biannual, or whatever you're going to call it, Contractor Coalition Summit. And that one was so good. Nashville was great. This one was just, the one in Huntington Beach just stepped it up like 100 notches. And I feel like everybody.
Good.
What's up?
No, yeah, I think there's a small delay. My bad.
All good. I just feel like everyone there was super dialed in. I don't know if it's because it was the second one and there was content out there showing like what to expect. So much good dialogue with everyone. Great conversation, big relationship building time, and came back with basically a massive list of what we felt we needed to do to elevate our brand to the next level. So since we got back, it's just been super, super deep work. And we're moving to a new.
Well, hold on. Since you got back, you went on a cruise too.
That's true.
You forgot to mention the cruise.
Yes, Danielle's 40th was on the 21st of November, and for her birthday, we did a cruise, and we were gone for 9 days. We were actually gone most of November, but for the rest of the time, it was head down.
All right. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because
yes.
I saw a lot of partying going on.
There was some, yes.
Yeah. I saw like fancy
Michael
drinks.
Said that he doesn't care
dinners.
what he does for his 40th, but I was like, bro, I need something special for my 40th.
Well, I'm getting something special. It's just going to be something to drive, not being driven in a boat.
There we go. That's funny. My my wife's birthday is in December and very close to Christmas. So every year she's like, don't plan anything. I hate it. I hate my birthday. I hate the fact that everyone has a million things going on. And anytime I've ever done it in my entire life, everyone bails because they have to Christmas shop or they got a holiday party or blah, 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 blah. And this year I plan, she's 39 this year. And this year I planned something earlier, like the first week of December. And I messaged like 20 people. And I was like, it's not a surprise, but just don't tell her yet. Like, I need this completely planned and everyone committed, and then I'll let her know. And sure enough, like day 2, someone told her, and I was like, wonderful. Like this better not fall apart, and it didn't. And one of her friends walked up to me when we were at the restaurant and was like, "Hey, Meg's having a great time." And said, if this is what you're doing for her 39th, the 40th must be crazy. And I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, I'll start planning that tomorrow.
Great idea. Great idea.
Or you just take her on a trip, and then you don't have to do all of the
Coordinating.
coordinating
true.
of all the details.
That's a good idea. I'll figure out where we can go. She'll let me.
Just
She'll
bring
tell
her to
me
one
where
of
she wants
the-
to go.
Just bring her to one of the summits. It'll be fine.
No, Michael.
Yeah, that's a negative. So all right, you guys, one of the things you said to me in Huntington was that when you guys left Nashville, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys tripled your revenue or something like that in like 6 months.
We did. So
what
Go
were
ahead.
you guys doing before, and what changed in that period? Because I think that was the I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but like, what were you guys doing before, and how did you go from that to what you were doing 6 months later?
I think the big thing for me that you hit on for the first time in Nashville was a burden rate. And I didn't know we didn't have a burden rate. I had never calculated that out. So it's like, oh, we have this much work in custom cabinetry that needs to be done. We can absolutely hire this guy to do all of our cabinetry, not adding up all of the liabilities, the insurances, taxes, general overhead. So once we got a good picture of that and married it with the fact that there's no way we can grow at scale and self-perform everything, that's when it switched. So we pulled back from self-performing and started subbing a lot more work out. And we actually found with most of our trades that they were doing the opposite. They were just subbing themselves out and no longer wanted to deal with the client aspect of it. So it kind of became a perfect marriage, and it allowed us to take on more, gave us more capacity, and we tripled our business through end of this year.
All right. So rewind. Who are you guys? Because Nick's just like rolling with it, and I feel like nobody even knows who you are.
Just flying into this thing.
We're a design build firm. We are located in Plymouth, Michigan. We're a husband and wife team. We actually initially started as a blog. I don't know if you know that.
I do. So you initially started, and it was not anything to do with what you're doing now, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, this is actually a second career for both of us.
Yeah, so that was actually pretty interesting to find out. So Danielle, you were in education, correct?
I was, yeah. I taught for 10 years. I taught second grade.
And I
And-
was in advertising for 12 years.
Yeah, that's so I was reading this, and it's insane for me to think like the amount of time and effort you guys put into careers and then starting a blog with kind of, in one area and then it just evolving to what it was, and kind of switching up in the middle of having kids and life and everything else. But so you guys, how did you guys meet? In Chicago, you said?
We met in Chicago.
We met from my brother.
Uh-oh.
No, it was cool. So my background, when I was 14, I started working with a construction company as a laborer. I graduated high school managing a drywall crew, and I didn't go to college right away. So I didn't actually move to Chicago to start college until I was 21. Met her brother there. He's a little bit younger than us. And when I got introduced to Danielle, we hit it off. She thought I was her brother's age, which I clearly was not. I was older. It's her age. And he gave the okay. And his exact words to me were, "I'd rather her date you than some douchebag." So that's
I didn't ask
Win.
permission.
so it was a win. And graduated school, went right into advertising, and then the move to Michigan happened after Enzo, our oldest, was born. Right before his first birthday, we were actually on vacation in Florida in the ocean. Just her and I just standing there, just enjoying the time. And I just said, "What do you think if we moved to Michigan to be closer to family?" And she said, "You were fucking crazy." Absolutely not.
So you're
Fast
originally from Michigan as well?
No, Michael's from St. Louis, and I'm from
Okay.
Michigan.
So fast forward a few months, and there was a shooting in our alleyway in Chicago, and she was nursing Enzo on the bed, and we could see out the window from our bed into the alley, and we saw the guy running. Cops got him right away, but she just looked at me and she's like, "It's time, do it." And within 2
Screw it.
weeks,
Let's go to Detroit.
yeah,
We don't live in
Get
Detroit.
the hell out of Chicago. Let's go to Detroit.
but it really was a move to be closer to family. We're about 30 minutes outside of Detroit. Really awesome. It's a suburban area with truly a city vibe. We can walk everywhere. Great restaurants, great shops. Our studios in downtown Plymouth, and our workshop is as well. So we just made the move here.
Why did you want to be in Michigan? Like, what was, you said to be closer to family, but that was her family.
It was her family. Mine is in St. Louis. My mom passed away when I was 15, and it's really right now just my dad that's there. And I have some cousins and aunts and uncles. We go back not so frequently, but when we do, we get to see everybody. The reason Michigan hit home for me is every time I came here visiting, it's the only place I felt like I could truly unplug. And then I switched the dial on that to 180. I don't unplug at all.
Well, and you said that Michigan always made you feel like home.
Yeah.
And so
Were
when
you
we
just
moved back,
saying this because you guys weren't that serious and you were just trying to butter her up some?
I mean, we were married at that point, but yeah.
and had
I
a
wanted to earn
child.
points.
So it sounds like Michigan's the only place that ever felt like home to me.
It's like we should get married.
Yeah.
You need to meet my mom. She makes everything feel like home.
Yeah. Rose
Really?
does.
Let's go to
Yeah.
Michigan, Nick.
All right.
Anytime.
You can come.
So I was reading, and it said that basically you started your first blog, which was a mommy blog,
Yeah.
mommy
It was called
foodie, something else.
Mom Wife Foodie.
And
I
was
wrote on
that
Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
was that just to like kind of express yourself creatively? Did you feel like you were in a rut? That was something you needed?
Yeah, it really was, because here I had left this career that I absolutely loved, and I kind of was starting to feel like I was lost in just being a mom. And so I had said forever that I wanted to write a blog, and Michael was like, "Well, now's your chance. Just do it. Write about things that you love." And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how that came to fruition for us.
So you had taught until you had kids, basically?
I taught after Enzo too. So
Okay.
I taught for a year and a half after him.
And then it was at that point you decided to move back to Michigan and stop teaching.
Correct.
And
the
what
reason we were
was
able to do that is because when I got my job offer in Detroit, because I did work for an agency in Detroit, the offer I got was more than double what we made combined in Chicago. So
Okay.
it was the opportunity to say, listen, if you're ever going to do it and take a step away, now's the time. So she did.
And that was something that you want. Like I'm looking back at when my wife worked before she had kids, and then we had kids, and I know that transition back to work was really difficult for her for many reasons. And it wasn't until we had our second kid where she was like, all right, I need to get away from them. This is too much being at home with them. But I like the transition after one was really difficult for her to go back to work full time.
Yeah, that was exactly me. I mean, I knew like ultimately I always wanted to stay home when our children were little, but unfortunately living in Chicago, that really wasn't an option for the two of us. We needed both salaries to survive there. And when the opportunity came for us to relocate here, and knowing that we were going to make more than what we were making combined together, that kind of turned it into a no-brainer. And then that really gave us the opportunity to explore what we wanted to do together. Michael has always had the entrepreneur push of like who he is as a person. Like he just is not built to work for somebody else. And as we kind of started to explore what we were going to do, the goal was ultimately for us to always build something that we were doing together. We just didn't know what that was. And so we explored a lot of different options. The blog was kind of like this creative outlet. I never thought the blog was actually what was going to turn into a full-on business for us. So we dabbled with photography, and we did family photography for a while because we were doing that on the blog and people were liking what they saw there. And then
We went
website
into
building, and Michael built a bunch of websites for
restaurants because we were shooting food content. So it was
Mm.
we were working with restaurants. We were on retainer with them, shooting their menus, doing events, building out their sites, social content.
and then we
managing
ran
their
social
channels.
media for a bunch of different restaurants.
So
And
is this while you were still working full time, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So the
Yeah, so-
transition from blog, it was your initial blog, and then I was reading basically that kind of evolved into what, more of what you were doing today, not necessarily intentionally, but kind of the content that you were putting out with fixing up your apartments and all of that stuff. People were coming to you with questions more so with design than what you got into it for. So you kind of switched it up at that point and went more towards what you're doing now, right?
yeah, so that is exactly how that happened. We basically started to look into our analytics, which I didn't even know that analytics was a thing when I first started blogging. And everybody was coming for a couple posts that we had written in regards to some of our own house content. And Michael was like, well, what if we rebrand? We already had Clark and Aldine as a business because that's what we were dabbling with in the background.
Yep.
And so we changed the blog name to Clark and Aldine. Michael started writing some of the blogs, and that went fast. So we changed that in February, and by
November 2nd.
Yeah, but by August, we had clients that we had like officially signed.
And November 2nd, 2018, I walked out the door of the agency, and that was it.
And that was for design work you were starting to get hired for at that point?
That was design and build.
That's crazy.
So we just filtered it.
So
Yeah,
it went from like 2015, you leaving, to 2018, you starting your own business, and Michael leaving his job.
Yep.
Yes.
So in the background, literally for 4 years almost, it was another job on top of the 40 to 50 hours I was putting in at the agency every week. So nights, weekends, tons of help from the family to even do everything we were doing. Then on top of that, it from around February 2018 and November 2018, during that time, I took all of the courses that I needed to take to get my builder's license in Michigan and got the license. So we stepped out legally.
So when did you kind of know that this was going to be your move? Like at what point?
I think probably maybe a year and a half before in 2017, because my last role in agency world, I was the head of global content strategy for the Chevrolet business. So any social media, digital content, written content, all hit strategy first before it went live. We were like the final gut check. And that job I was miserable. I hated it. It was constant hours. I didn't find any joy from it.
I think it was just like such a brutal world to watch him go through, and that people really lost the connection that you were working with other humans.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was one of those situations where you get directives on like a creative brief, be innovative, really push the needle, do something that's never been done. And then once we deliver something that we all feel great about, like this is it, this is crazy, then clients just pull the scale back and say, let's just stick with what we've been doing. That's fine. And it just, I lost the joy. It was just going to work to provide, which is essential. I had to do that. But we had something that we were building in the background that I actually found joy from. So coming home and working on a remodel at our house, shooting the content, writing it, strategizing on what's next, like that brought me true joy. And it was
Had
just
you guys monetized at that point? Had you guys been monetizing? Okay. Because I was gonna be like, this is even more insane that like you left your teaching job and then you left a job where you're making twice as much money to be like, let's see if it works. We have a couple kids. Let's roll the dice.
Well, like
what's interesting? Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was gonna say what's interesting is like you started as the mom wife foodie blog, and I don't know if I missed something, but it was like it went from mom wife foodie blog to Michael's writing some blogs, and then next thing you know, you own a design build company. And I was like, wait, I feel like I just missed something, because how did it go from mom wife foodie to owning a design build company. And
So
I
the
think that
one thing that happened in between there, I can give you that.
you renovated your house.
I went to a blogger conference, and it was a mom blog conference. And I got there and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here?
Mm,
If this is the audience that I'm writing to, I'm writing to the wrong audience.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like that trigger to me. And that's when I came home and he was like, okay, well, let's relook at this. And so when we started to relook at that, that's when we transferred. And then it literally went so fast.
So
And-
is it my understanding is like you guys, what you just said, I just want to make sure I understand. You
Yeah.
at one point you guys went back and looked, all right, if that's not the audience you want, let's think about like how to curate our blog to an audience that we do want, which led
Yes.
you to people that DIY and renovate homes, which led
Correct.
you to renovating your home, creating content for it, which then led to owning the business.
Correct.
Yes. So we had already started to renovate our own home, and that was part of Mom Wife Foodie. And we were like just little bit
Just sprinkling a little bit of home stuff in.
some of that
Sure.
in. And when we went back and we looked at the analytics, we realized everybody was coming to the post that we did on the one room challenge for our master bedroom. And so then they were like, oh, maybe we should blog a little bit more about this. And
Mhm.
the beauty is that Michael, while he was doing it himself, he actually had a skill set of like how to actually do this. And
Yeah.
then the design stuff, I didn't go to school for it, but I feel like I just have that passion and have that eye for what I'm looking for and how to pull those elements together. And then we just wrote about it.
So you were
People read
still kind of pushing that through your initial blog, and then in 2018 or whatever, you're like, let's rebrand and kind of launch this as a new venture.
Yep.
Yes. And we kept the blog going still.
And it was weird
But
for
no
me.
more cloth diapers.
No,
Correct.
no more cloth diapers. But it was weird for me because I was writing content on the site for Mom Wife Foodie, and there was just a disconnect there, which I was cool with it. Like, hey, it's hers, I'll help out. But we knew at that point we wanted to build something different and bigger and something that was obtainable for us. So we rebranded, and then that led us to where we're at today.
And that all basically came from both Instagram, and then Pinterest has continued to drive our traffic. And our referrals are still to this day 98% from Instagram or Pinterest.
So when you just dropped the term one room challenge, I think that was an actual challenge, right? Like a social media thing where people were taking one
still
room.
is.
And so is that how you approached the world of like blogging about renovation? And like, hey, I know we're working on our home, but we also have this opportunity to create content. Why don't we jump on this train of this one room challenge thing, and let's pick a room? Like,
Yeah, that was all her. And we had started the day we got the keys to our house. I ripped all the doors out, molding out. I started knocking walls down, and it was probably 8 to 10 week process of just remodeling again at nights and on the weekends before we actually moved into the house. And then we moved in and we still didn't have any moldings or doors on, with a 1-year-old and another one on the way, or 2-year-old and another one on the way.
Like, what about your advertising background? When you started, when you were blogging yourself, Michael, like was the advertising, that creative side that you weren't able to fulfill with, kind of Chevrolet, right? Like, were you bringing that to the table with, hey, I'm going to blog about this and like dig into my, creative mindset, and also kind of curate how you're going to portray what you guys are doing through, the DIY stuff and the renovation stuff?
Absolutely. It was, doing the work was a creative outlet. It wasn't just doing the construction side. I was also shooting the content, editing the content, pushing the content live on the site. Like, she was the mastermind of basically the architect of what it's going to look like, who we're catering to, working with brands, because during this time we were building relationships with brands and working with them a lot on trade, but eventually started getting paid for it. But that was the creative outlet, because I just didn't have it at work. And I may or may not have spent, I don't know, a couple work hours at the office dabbling in what we needed to do.
But the one room challenge really gave us that opportunity of like a structure of how we could blog about it, because it started when we first did it. It was like 6 weeks. Every week you document what you accomplished that week. And at the end of 6 weeks, you're showcasing what your finished product is. And the goal was like, it's not a challenge of like who's going to win. It's more of a community-based challenge of like, hey, you can tackle a room and make a difference in your house in 6 weeks. And since then, we've done several of those. We've actually been a feature designer with them during the pandemic, which was a whole crazy situation. And
When you say them, who's them?
The one room challenge. So it's they're a business.
Oh,
Look them up.
all right.
Linda.
No, because then I'm gonna end up
She
doing
runs
one room challenges around my house, and I want to gut. I want to gut the house.
Yeah,
You get 8 weeks now, Nick.
yeah, and we never actually did one room. The last one we did was our entire basement. The one during the pandemic was the entire first floor. Started as the kitchen. It was the entire
It
first floor.
was one room, you guys. I just like opened it up. That was
Right.
one room that had like 4 different spaces in it.
Of course.
There was
All
no
right,
transition.
When Michael, you go to leave your job, what was, and you said that you had gone and gotten your builder's license.
Yep.
So you guys have created this blog and this following, and you're getting customers coming to you for design and build work. Was this blog like your outreach? Is it more local or national at this point? How are you ensuring that you're going to be able to kind of keep the amount of work that you need to sustain within your actual market? Like, did you have a ton of people within your market already coming to you?
We had one client sign with us before we left. And this was a basement remodel. And I think at the end of the day, we were at like 30,000. It was a small basement, like 450 square feet, but it needed to be fully built out. So we left with that one client. And then that weekend, because my last day was on a Friday, by Sunday, we had signed another. So it's like, oh, okay, good. We have 2 clients. We're basically locked in through March. And then it just kept evolving from there, because on social and on our site, Danielle was storytelling each project like week by week. On social was every day, and building up, kind of like hyper localizing our audience and telling the story. And it just clients just kept coming one after another, and
Yeah, because it's like you could build up a huge following, whether it be blog or social, but that doesn't mean that you've tapped into your own market, right? You could have a million followers and live in an area that doesn't, it won't allow you to do the work that you're doing, or you haven't tapped into that market. So it's interesting to see how you can kind of take it from like a national level or a broader level of people, and then, like you said, hyper focus that down into your actual market to get jobs and stay busy based on what you want to be doing.
Well, and what we did actually is when we did make the move of going full time, we created a separate Instagram page for the brand, and Mom Way Foodie became my personal page, because we felt like that audience was really widespread and we did want to hyper localize that. And so that was how we made that. And I just kept pushing people from my personal page over to the brand page. And that helped drive the traffic to, again, stay local and the storytelling over and over and over again, and really bringing people back on the journey that we were on. I think like kind of what you shared in your story, Nick, earlier this week, about how like you become so close to your story that you're not sharing it over and over again. At that point, like that was all we had. And so I was just sharing it every single day.
And the other thing Dee was doing, we're really good friends with a couple that owns a local shop here called 28 Furniture. And Danielle started these events with Jen, one of the owners, where people would pay to come, and it was all about styling. So how to style a dining room table, how to style a bookshelf. So it was a paid event. Danielle and Jen threw it. And then since Jen owns a store, there was always like a discount if the attendees bought, items that night. We've had 2 clients come to us from those events, and those were 6-figure projects. So it's not only tapping into your local market from a digital perspective, it's doing everything you can to actually become to partner and collaborate in your market with, whether it's somebody that owns a furnishing store, or it's a restaurant, like whatever you can find in your niche that taps in, go local that way, because you truly never know who you're going to meet and what that person could be to you in the future.
Yeah, that's just expanding your network, and
Yep.
and making that network much more dynamic. Your area of Plymouth, where you guys are now, it is close to Detroit, right? I think it's like
Yep.
30 miles west of the city. I was trying to look up what it's like in Plymouth, and all I could really find is that you guys host the Plymouth Ice Spectacular, which is one of the oldest ice carving
Yes.
festivals in North America. That was pretty sick.
Your research is on point. dude.
Did you see how it kind of looks like a mini Hallmark card in our
I mean,
downtown area?
it got me excited. I'm not gonna lie. But other than that, and that Daisy BB guns were manufactured there, I couldn't find that much more about
Were they really?
Plymouth.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah.
Daisy BB.
Yeah, so apparently it was like a metal production plant that they started building Daisy sporting goods out of. But what is your area like? Is there a spillover of culture, like what Detroit was like into your area? Because I know near us, right, you have the major hubs, and then you have that suburban sprawl that happened, and it's like you create all of these little areas outside of the city that kind of end up gentrifying and everything else. But what is your area like? Is it like Detroit? Is it completely isolated from Detroit? What's your market look like?
I would say completely different than Detroit. Detroit's a great city. The way I like to describe it is, you look at a city like Chicago, and living there, to us, like, yeah, the city's big, but it's actually really small. There are all these neighborhoods that surround here in the center, like all these neighborhoods that surround the downtown area, and they're all built up and populated. There's neighborhoods, these individual cultures and dynamics, versus where we are in Detroit. Like, Detroit downtown is built very, very much commercial and entertainment driven. You have Midtown, you have Corktown. There's these little pockets, but it doesn't connect all the way out to kind of the suburbs where we live. There's this big section of disconnect, and I think it's not just because of what Detroit has dealt with over the years. It's a manufacturing city. This is auto world here, so it's not for lack of necessarily trying or developing. It's, you have all these plants and the big commercial buildings, tool and die factories, like everything is done here, and that's in the midst of all these neighborhoods. So that's kind of what sets it apart, I guess.
So you guys have like an economy within your own city, or is it more of a commuter town?
It's a commuter town. I think that you're seeing people that are going into Detroit, but we're also 15 minutes from Ann Arbor. So
Okay.
you also see people that are going into Ann Arbor, or even just around here, that people work locally around here.
I remember when I was in Detroit a couple of years ago. It was probably 5 years ago at this point, but that's what I remember is like I flew in and it was this weird like distance to get into the city and of just nothing. And then I got to the city, and at the time I was there, I forget what year it was, but I remember it was just being very, very quiet. And it was like a Monday, Tuesday afternoon, and I'm like, and I was on the phone with my wife. I'm like, Meg, I don't even see cars there's not even people driving by me. It was so incredibly quiet, and it was weird.
It's still like that a lot of the time now.
Yeah,
Like,
and
before the pandemic, I feel like we saw less of that, and we saw a city that was starting to thrive.
Yeah,
and since the pandemic, I feel like we're seeing that all over again.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the only experience I've had there, but I remember there being a lot of construction, a lot of buildings being knocked down, and a lot of buildings going up. It was interesting.
Yep. And they still have that. And I mean, the metro area of Detroit is thriving. There's any city, township that you go to, it's really its own thing. I mean, everyone here is very supportive of Detroit. We claim it, but it's these neighborhoods and townships and
small
cities.
Towns.
And they're all built up, and it's cool to see.
Yeah, I haven't been to Detroit, but I understand kind of what you're saying with Chicago, that it's like a small city, but then it just kind of sprawls. It's the same thing with Philly. People are like, "Oh, I'm from Philly," and it's like you don't live in Philly, and it's a Philly suburb that kind of it's within the county of Philadelphia, but it's not Philadelphia. But I
And that's
haven't
how
been.
Boston is too. It's like,
Yep.
you
St.
know,
Louis, same way.
yeah.
It's interesting to be that close to the city with you guys, though, and be like so independent of the city. Because I feel like everything around Philly near us is based on a hub of Philadelphia, just because everything just kind of like sprawls out towards there.
And that's exactly how we felt about Chicago.
Yeah,
But it's not the same. I mean, Detroit still has a lot of what I refer to as like a Detroit desert. When you get down there, they just don't have all the amenities. Even like down to, you were saying when we were talking about doing business down there aren't like hardware stores and
Yeah, we've gotten asked to go to Detroit and do some remodels, but you start looking around, it's like, all right, it's gonna be 30 minutes to get there. Matt, our GC, it's like he's gonna have to drive the trailer, our subs are gonna have to get down there. But as you know, like every day somebody's gonna have to run to Home Depot, Lowe's, specialty store, but there's nothing around.
yeah.
So it's like an addition. If you have to go somewhere, then it's an additional 15 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
However long you spend in the store, additional 15 minutes to get back, and even longer versus where we're at. Every job we pretty much have, I mean, one of the stores is 5-10 minutes away.
Right.
It's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Going back to the blog, right? So Michael, you're writing blogs. No, I'm so interested in this because
I didn't know that blogs were like still happening, to be honest.
They are.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah, and they're still super powerful.
yeah,
Like,
I didn't realize that.
we have
get on it.
Construction
Get
is
on
style. Their blog is crazy.
yeah, I mean, her numbers are just
Nuts.
wild,
Absolutely
wild,
nuts.
absolutely
Our numbers are
wild.
not that.
And it's like, I mean, we have blogs on automation at this point where every video we have, we can almost automatically create a blog from it. But I want to understand, like, you come in, you start blogging. What was the reason? What was your exact reason for coming on and adding to the blog for you, Michael?
Because Danielle asked me to.
Okay.
That's really the only reason. She's like, I think you should start writing some of this stuff. You're doing the work in the house. Like, we should start doing how-tos about how to install baseboards or how to refinish a cabinet front or whatever the topics were way back then. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll start it. It's kind of weird that it's Mom Wife Foodie, but also this was even weirder. She started the podcast way back called the Mom Wife Foodie Podcast, and guess who the co-host was on that? Me. Which was absolutely bizarre. And I was like, this is such a disconnect. I'm not a mom. I'm not a wife. I do love food.
But I mean, you're the husband.
This is true.
I think that I feel like that does make a little sense. But like on a blog, maybe I can see the disconnect on the blog where it's like you're kind of hit, like you're not in the behind a camera or on a mic, right? It's text. I think about there's a actually, I gave it to an ex-employee, but I had this book and I was reading it, and I think it's called, I want to say it's called like You're a Badass or something like that.
Yeah, we know that one. We probably
so it's a yellow book, and I'm reading it. So I got 50% of the way through that book, and then I was like, wait, is this a girl talking to me? Like, and I didn't know that. And I don't want to come on like, it changed my tune of the book, not in a bad way. Just like I like completely was like, I actually at that point did not feel like I was relating to things, and not because like, obviously I'm a male, but I'm reading it and I just was like, I feel like I've read this whole book up to this point with a different perspective. And now that I know it's a woman, like my perspective is off. And again, I'm not saying that like I don't trust a woman. Like, that's not the point of this. My point is like, I just didn't connect to it. And I think from a blogging perspective, that's where I could relate to it, where it's like if you're blogging under this, Danielle's persona, and there's probably a lot of people that read that not realizing that you kind of were jumping in, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but
I can't remember if I signed it, Michael, or not, but I don't know. I have to look back.
But so all right, so Danielle asks you decide to to do that because you're starting to talk about house stuff and you're getting probably more technical and some how to and like figuring out like how to promote that. So what was like, was there a very clear, hey, we have our first lead, or was it way more casual where it's like, hey, someone asked us to do this thing. Let's go like design this or remodel this for them. And next thing you knew, it grew into a business.
It actually started casually where people were just DMing us, be like, hey, this looks great. I have a project in my house. Can you do it? And we're like, appreciate the support and the question. Like, no, we're not doing it for anybody right now. We're just doing it on our own house. But, thank you. We hope you, stick with us. When it really came to fruition, we had new neighbors that moved in down the street, relocated to Plymouth from Chicago. We introduced ourselves. We started hanging out because they had a young one as well. And they needed their basement done. And we looked at it. We decided like, hey, this could be a real deal. Like, let's give this a shot. And
real deal because you could create content, or because you could sell and make this a project for a business.
It was a true opportunity for us to roll the dice and go for it. This is the first like real tangible lead that we had. And it took a few months to just get the estimates together, get coordinating times to get into their house. And we estimated out a whole bunch of spaces for them. And they had gotten quotes from other people. We were not the highest. We also weren't the lowest. The reason they went with us is, one, they're entrepreneurs as well. So they had a love for that. But two, was the way that we wrote out our estimate. It was detailed line item by line item. Like everything was on the estimate. We used Joist at the time, so we're able to like break everything out and categorize it. And they said the other estimates that they got were just like bulk numbers. Like I can do it for 24,000. This doesn't include fixtures. Like there was nothing broke out. So I think the transparency up front and the detailed approach that we took is the main reason why we got it. But yeah, that was the first opportunity that made it seem real, and it just hit at the right time where I knew and she knew that time was wearing thin on my ability to keep doing what I was doing.
And and when it comes to putting together that estimate, like why did you put it together in the way that you did? Why did you share so much? Why were you so detailed? Like, where did that come from?
Honestly, putting together estimates and timelines for my job.
Yeah.
Whether it was we were hiring out a creative agency and had to create, an asset list, working for one of the big three. It's like you have to triple bid everything. Everything has to be broken out by line items. So you have photographer 1, photographer 2, equipment fees, travel, like everything is dialed in. They want to know every single number and they scrutinize it. So as much as I guess I just took that experience and transferred it over to what we do.
Yeah.
And it just worked.
When you guys started working together, how did you kind of define your roles within the business? Being like, props to you guys first off for working together, because my wife and I would not be married and possibly one of us not be alive if we worked together.
It's not for everybody.
But like, how do you define your roles? Who does what, and what did that kind of look like from the get-go?
I think that initially for us, it was, we kind of just, Michael did everything that was construction related. I did everything else. So anything that had to do with the build side of the house, he did. Everything else I did. And then as we continued to grow and develop, we learned very, very quickly that our communication style needed to be very direct, very honest, and immediate. Because if there were issues between the two of us, that would then travel into the next thing and next thing and next thing. And then on top of that, I feel like as with any entrepreneur, you become very close with yourself and you realize like all of your faults. At least I did immediately. And then all of the stressors that are stressing you out as an entrepreneur. And so that involved us doing a lot of personal work on like, how do I make sure that I'm centered? How do I make sure that I'm taking care of myself? And how do we make sure that we're first taking care of our marriage? Because if our marriage is failing, everything around us is going to be failing.
Yeah, there's so many difficulties Yeah, I mean, there's so many difficulties with working with like family, let alone
Yeah.
husband, wife. And it's like you want to keep things separate, right? Or you're going to handle the construction, I'm going to handle design. But then you guys own that. And there's the whole personal level of that where it's like, well, now you want to change something and it hurts more because it's like, I just put all this blood, sweat, and tears into it. I'm your husband. You couldn't have told me this 2 days ago. This is costing me time, sanity, money. And now you're looking at it as like my wife is just doing this to me, not a customer, and you can't separate that. And it's so difficult. Like that's why even with
Yeah,
my
he
wife, I'm just like,
really
we're not going to
disliked
do
when
it.
we first started, and I would like walk
Yeah.
through a project and find like one thing that he didn't do that I'd like, and he'd be like, "D, there's all this other stuff that's good." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. There's just that one thing though. Can you fix that?" I've gotten better at that communication first. You say something positive. I should know this from teaching.
But like that's
Then
even worse because I feel like then you're just patronizing me. I'm like, just don't even give me the bullshit at that point. Just like tell me what's up. Like don't try
Oh,
and
I definitely said
butter
that a
me
couple
up by
You show up
telling
on
me
the
like
job
you
site, it's like,
half-ass you like this.
oh, the paint looks so good. Okay, what's wrong? Okay, good. Yeah, the floors are the wrong color, guys.
Where I think
Um,
we benefited from working together like early on is it was important to us, at least important to me. Like I never wanted to show any level of friction or anything in front of a client. So
yeah.
us working together, there were never those times where we were snappy at each other or, I was calling her out for something or vice versa. Like we communicated very well in front of clients. We
Mhm.
still do, even better now. But I think there were numerous times where a conversation could have gone the wrong direction. But because we were there, we somehow utilized the time and talked through it. So at the end of it, when we left, it was like, all right, we need to address that. And that's it. Like it was already over. There was no animosity. There was no time for us to get in a debate or an argument about it. And the more that we've worked together, the more that we've worked on ourselves. Like there are times where I don't want to say things get heated, but Danielle and I both have pretty dominating personalities and are very outspoken.
Just getting
And
even
that,
better.
yes, and it comes out, but it's very rare that happens. And it's like we know how to work with each other and communicate, and just we're pretty much on the same page across the board, which
Okay,
is
So
also very weird
do-
and rare.
But do you guys? So do you parent the same way?
no.
No.
Yeah. See, that's like as you're talking. So I don't work with my wife either. But as you're talking, I'm relating this to the way we parent, and I think about if my wife did work with me and we were in front of a client, yeah, I would support her 100%. I wouldn't call her out and we would address it outside of the room, right? But as parents, I'm like, man, that's how I want it to be. But we never address it outside the room. It's like, and then the kids are like, what's going on? I'm like, I guess the reason I ask that is because I feel like parenting, and again, with no experience of working with my wife, would be a direct reflection of the way we would not work so well together. Is that like we don't always see eye to eye on parenting. I'm way more strict. I can be a hard ass about certain things. And she constantly tells me, she's like, pick your battles. I'm like, I am. And this is the one I've chosen. And it's
Yeah.
like,
yeah,
she
you
goes,
can't
it's
tell me
it's
which
a
battle
Five
lot.
to
in a
pick.
row.
It's a lollipop. I'm like, it's 9:30 at night.
Yeah, that's me.
But yeah.
I mean, I've gotten a lot better, I think, but she's had to sit me down a couple times and just say, listen, I love you. I know you're meaning well, but you have to scale back, hit the brakes a little bit.
With the kids.
Raising, we have two boys, Enzo and Ziggy, and like my dad gave me my work ethic. He gave me manners. He just set a really good example for me, and we both have done the same for our kids. And I mean, Enzo and Ziggy will both open the door and hold it open for somebody. They will get a cart out of the parking lot and want to use that cart and push it in. So we're cleaning up. They have really good hearts and really good souls. But I still do need to do work on picking and choosing like what battle is worth it. And where I just say, you know what, I'm just going to let it go.
Well, and I also have a whole background in children.
Yeah.
So
And so does my wife. So like,
Are you
I-
calling Michael a child right now? Is it a dig?
no.
I am a child
So you-
sometimes.
Yeah.
But
so
our
you-
leadership styles working together are also extremely different as well. The way that we manage, the way that we communicate to our team, they're just different. It's a different delivery. I mean, we just did a branding exercise as part of our growth since coming back from the summit, and we're adding some more branding to what we're doing. And in that branding exercise, it had you answer all these questions, and then it came back as your like leadership style. We had 2 different ones, and when we were reading through them, it was wild to me how like accurate that was
Yeah.
of like Michael's leadership style versus my
Mhm.
leadership style. And I'm sure our team could tell you the exact same thing of like who they would go for through like mom and dad, who you're going to go through
Right.
for one thing versus who you're going to go to for another.
It's funny. I've been running those personality tests, the DISC survey, specifically on new hires and especially people that are in a leadership role. Because when I filled mine out, I'm reading all the good things I do, right? Like, oh, I'm a big drive guy, big influence guy, and then I'm kind of low scaling in support and clarity. And then I start reading my support and clarity and reading all the things I suck at. I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. I suck at that too.
But it's all you're going to pay attention to is what it tells you.
Yeah. But it was really good because when I hired my operations manager, there was the first thing I was like, hey, I need you to fill this out. And when he filled it out, he was the exact opposite of me, like exact opposite. I was like, great. Now we're a full circle here and we balance. But it's funny because, I think about when you talk about like leadership style and your employees like coming to separately, like that that's very real. Like the kids will do it, employees will do it. Same thing in my side where it's like I'm not working with Meg or my wife, but totally dependent on what that problem is in front of them. They will handle that with a certain person because of the way that they will react in that situation. But the one thing that I always think about, I guess I think about working with my wife more than I knew, but when I think about it,
up a couple times already.
Get ready.
It's weird. I have this fear, and I've told her this, that I'm like, I just feel like we couldn't work together because I feel like I would treat her differently than someone else that works for the company.
I don't think you guys could work together.
I don't either. But and she's like, what do you mean?
No
I'm like,
chance.
I feel like, I would just be like super demanding and be like, why didn't you get this done? And I'm like, and she's like, you're not like that with any of you're very pretty even keeled. Like you're pretty calm. And
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit in this.
I think Meg would eat you up and then spit you out.
Maybe it's not me I'm afraid of. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just afraid of Meg.
I don't think you have a chance.
That's fair.
I mean, we've at home, there's been, and again, it doesn't happen as frequently as it has in the past, but yeah, we've gotten in some blowout arguments. That never happens at the office. And I think because we've worked so much on our relationship as business partners, that it's just transformed into a better relationship as life partners.
So let's talk.
And when it
Let's talk about that a little bit. And you kind of spilled the beans there that you guys went to therapy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Say that?
not relationship therapy,
Yes.
not relationship therapy, not marriage counseling, anything like that. But I think it was about was it our first year or second year?
It was our first year when my anxiety was like
through
the
frickin'
roof.
Yeah.
And so I started to see a therapist just because I was like all the time just living under straight stress. And that really was like supportive, obviously, to talk it out to somebody else. And then Michael.
We had one client that just crazy story, and we don't need to go into it today, but this client was wild and basically holding like our final payment over our heads. And it was everything at the time. It was like 21 grand. So it's a pretty big final payment. And again, we've restructured so things are spread out now, but we didn't know better at the time. And I just felt something I never felt before. Like super high anxiety. My body hurt. I just was like shaking and scared, like very scared. So I went to Holly, who's our therapist, and Holly sees us both because we're not there for marriage counseling. We're just there to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We invest a lot of time in that to be better people, better partners, better leaders. Just in general, be more present and available to those around us that need it. That's the whole purpose of us going. But I went the first time. It kind of changed my life and my outlook, and it continued for a year, and then I dropped for a year. I just stopped going. I was like, I don't need this. I did all the work that I need, and then I was a fucking disaster again.
Mhm.
So now it's been 2 years. Every other Tuesday, one of us goes. Sometimes we go together if we need to work through a problem or just want to talk together about things.
And we've kind of structured it based on like what our needs have been. So like there's been times where I felt like I needed to go every week or twice a week. And so then I was doing that based on things that were happening, and Michael would still go. Um we've really structured it just so that it's meeting the needs of where we're at again, realizing that if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not taking care of like our mental health, that everything else is going to crumble.
And it's one of
Yeah,
those
and
things too that we've transferred into our company too. Like we have PTO plan, holiday plan, but our PTO is mandatory. Like absolutely zero excuse. You take the time. And if you don't fly
Mhm.
anywhere, you don't drive anywhere, that's you do you. But
Right.
those days that we pay you to have that time off, you need to have it because you need mental health time. And it's
Yeah.
in every one of our job offers, it's in our contract, and we iterate it as, we're getting towards, mid-year. It's like, hey, get your vacations in. You need to take the time off, and it doesn't roll over. But we're also the type of leaders in company. It's like we ourselves have done it, and we've had employees do it. We're just reach out in the morning, like, listen, I need today. I'm not with it. I'll be back tomorrow. I just need to focus on myself today. It's totally cool. Do your thing.
Yeah.
Glad
Right.
glad you're bringing it up. Glad you're doing it, because especially in the construction world, I don't think that there is a priority or much of an acknowledgement on the importance of mental health. I think the pandemic has helped it globally as a discussion point, but even when your major healthcare providers don't consider mental health an essential form of healthcare, there's a problem. So we're doing everything that we can in our small team and on our platform to really be advocates for it,
Yeah.
and push everyone to just take some time.
It's I mean, like I feel like the pandemic has just brought and shed awareness on the extremes of
Mhm.
mental health. Like, but there's so many people like yourselves where it's just kind of reflecting on yourself, inventorying yourself, whether it's once a week or every 2 weeks, where you kind of gauge where you stand and find your center. And it doesn't have to necessarily be sitting down and speaking with a therapist. It could be doing yoga, it could be meditating, it could be
Yep.
exercising, whatever that may be. Like some people just don't take the therapist. Like I for much of my youth, my parents would try to get me to speak with therapists, and it never really stuck with me. There's other things that work for me, but that's not.
Yep.
But I think that there needs to be more light shed on just the overall mental health of people, where it's not like the extremes of it, where hey, yeah, like taking a couple hours to yourself to just find where you stand and
Yep.
mentally disengage from everything. And if that's talking to somebody, that's talking to somebody, but it really can be helpful. And it doesn't have to be for marriage, it doesn't have to be for business. It can just be,
Correct.
it's week to week, day to day, how you're feeling. And that's incredible that you guys do that, and that you've kind of stuck with it, and that you've realized that when you don't, and maybe that wasn't you realizing, maybe it was your wife kind of hinting to you, but like when you don't get that, how bad you can be. And it's the crazy thing about mental health and the anxiety and everything else is a lot of times, like if you bailed for that year, you probably didn't realize the slow progression of where you started to like where you ended up. Like you don't
Right.
know. It's not like you're like, oh, I feel, I missed a week. I feel bad all of a sudden. It'll be like 3-4 months later where you don't know what's wrong. And then somebody's like, well, you haven't been going to therapy. Maybe you should try that again.
Yep. And it's I agree with you, Tyler, 100% that not everyone can, and not everyone's going to resonate talking with a therapist. That's just one thing that we do. But we also work out We have pretty religious exercise in our life. We eat well. We even invested time with seeing a holistic healthcare provider and like balancing out, doing blood work, balancing that out. Like we've kind of gotten deep into it. But to your point, just moving your body, exercising your mind, like it, just that those minor steps alone. You don't have to go in the gym and lift the barbell for an hour a day, but getting out for a walk, getting in nature, just taking some time to move your body kind of, I don't want to say effortlessly, but in a way that it's not for work.
Right.
Yeah.
It's something different.
Do you
Well,
guys work out together?
Sometimes.
Oh my God. What, don't you ever want to be away from each other?
Michael says we do all the things together.
Don't you ever get tired of each other? I mean, leave me alone. I want to go work out by myself.
Well, that's usually when she goes upstairs in the bedroom, or I go up and she's downstairs. We just find separate time at night or during the day. We get a little separation here and there.
I mean, we've talked a lot about mental health and just the importance of that, but everybody has that own inner story that you're telling in your head, and
Right.
that inner story is constantly changing and evolving, and it's a story that you've made up. And a lot of people don't recognize that they have some form of anxiety because they're like,
Right.
that's just what they live with. That's just their everyday normal of this is just the story that I'm telling myself. And so I think to go back to what you were saying, Tyler, is just as humans, we need to take that time to pause and be still in the moment versus just going all the time. And so having those meditation moments or having that yoga or those quiet walks that Michael was saying is just really efficient for you as a whole, as a human as a whole, so that you're like present with yourself versus moving all the time.
Do you feel like that story is kind of justification to continue doing or feeling whatever you're feeling?
I think oftentimes, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that you can get in, that's a lot of times I think it's like can form a downward spiral, especially if you're in a spiral. And then you keep rethinking it over and over.
And I think that's where it's really important to surround yourself with good people and like-minded people, because I think that the story that you kind of create and conjure in your head is based on not only your own experience and your own story, but what other people are doing and justifying what you're doing because so-and-so did it. And I think that, surrounding yourself with people who want to be up or want to be doing good things, they're not going to be setting a poor example that's going to allow you to justify continuing with that behavior or down that path. I don't want to be a justification for my kids doing certain things, so I won't do them because I don't want them to be like, well, dad did it, so it's fine. Because that's what plants that seed to create that story in your mind where it's like you have to stop and you have to take some time to question that internal dialogue and that story and kind of, like you said, find center. Is this right? Am I doing this because somebody else does it? Is it what really I want to be doing? Is this a path I want to be on in life? And not kind of, like you said, just get trapped in that loop of day to day without ever questioning that.
Well, and I think that a lot of that comes back to finding time to silence your mind and going back to the meditation aspect. And it's like, I started meditating years ago, but had no clue what I was doing. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to meditating, they're just like, I can't do it. My mind doesn't stop. I don't know how to do it. I'm like, that's the point though. That is meditating. The point of meditation is to redirect your mind back every time that your mind wanders. And it's very mind-blowing to me to the amount of times that we've talked about that with either our own employees or just people around, like, take 5 minutes and do that. And they're like, but the whole time my brain's wandering. I'm like, you're doing it right. To watching like our lead designer, when she first started, she was like, I can't meditate. And now she meditates every single day. And that has been cool to watch. And I mean, I just watched 2 of our teammates check out. You guys are lucky. Today's Yoga Tuesday, and they just checked out to go to yoga, and I'm still here.
So, and I don't, I've been of the mindset where like meditation for me would take a lot of self-discipline
Does.
because my mind is always wandering. But like, would the idea be to create those habits in your brain that you're not consciously telling yourself to not think about stuff, right? Like it's going to start by telling yourself that, and then eventually you'd get to the point where you don't have to tell yourself that.
No, you're always. I mean, even in a 45-minute meditation, I'm still redirecting myself. But you're always when the thought comes through, you're recognizing that the thought's there, and then you're letting that thought go and you're coming back to your breath.
So that'd be a lot of work for me.
Versus when you first start, all you're doing is you're getting on that thought, and then you're like, shit, how long have I been thinking about this?
Yeah.
And then you're pulling yourself back in. And so the better that you get at meditating, what ends up happening too is that you're catching that thought earlier on and then redirecting yourself back.
I think that oftentimes with meditation, people confuse it with like hypnotism.
Yeah.
And you know, because like they talk about that there's a term for it, but it's like, you know, I'm sure we've all done it. You know, you're driving down the highway and then like 15 miles go by and be like, you shake your head, you're like, whoa, was I even paying attention these last 15? Yeah, how did I get here? And it's in that, I think, is what people envision meditation to be, is that you sit there and next thing you know, it's like a half hour goes by and you've actually not thought of anything. Where, you know, like Danielle's saying, it's being able to consciously understand that your mind is drifting and then pull that back and then start back at like your breath or zero or whatever it is. And, you know, I've said it too. It's like, I can't meditate, but it's just a different form of meditation. Like Tyler, you say, like when you ride, it's your mind is thinking of nothing but riding.
Yeah.
Present in that exact moment. That is a moving meditation.
Right. And for me, you know, I've mentioned it before that I've been like doing the watercolor with my kids, and it's like the only time that I'm just like sitting there, like not thinking about something strategic, and my mind is just like, you know, floating around in the clouds. But
did you find the watercolor that got tossed out?
No, but I made another one.
Okay, good.
I made another one just so I could send a picture of it to Tyler, see, and tell him. What was the one I sent? Was it Trolls, or was that the one that got thrown away?
No, it wasn't Trolls. I feel like it was like a dragon or something.
Oh, it was a dragon. Yeah. So I'm gonna auction it off. So
one thing I
for big money
that Tyler said was surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and something I've struggled with a lot. And I'm going to do a plug for the Coalition Summit because I think it's important. I struggled for the longest time of trying to surround myself locally.
Yeah.
With like-minded people, spending time with them, having friends that I go out with, you know, doing things outside of work with. That's not always going to be the case. And for like what we're building, what you guys are building individually with your businesses and with your own brands, you're not always going to find people in your local area that resonate, that understand, that truly get what you're trying to do. But there are so many relationships that and communities that can be tapped into from a digital perspective, and then attending an event like the Coalition Summit, you know, that those people are there for a reason. All 20, 30, 40, however many people were there. Everyone was there for one purpose. And well, I guess there's multiple purposes, but you get it. It's to learn, build, strengthen, like that. That's what I think of when I think of the summit. And those are those like-minded people. And, you know, that there are different levels and different tiers of events and things that people can sign up and be a part of. But your circle doesn't have to be in your hometown, in your area. Your circle can expand out globally. And once I realized that and put more time and effort into building those relationships in the digital world, well, now those relationships are coming to fruition in the real world, like actual meeting people, spending time with people, making memories and having good stories to tell. So I think that's important. And that was something I struggled with for a long time.
So, and we talked about this in the last podcast, and Tyler oddly sent me an article, I think from the Wall Street Journal today.
Avid reader.
Wall
Street Journal.
But it was specifically talking about how men don't have friends. Like most men don't have a close group of friends. And as they get older,
I don't have time for friends.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah, and it's, you know, and for the most of our life, like that's okay, right? Like we're okay with it. We got stuff going on, we got kids, we got a wife, we got a business, we got this, we got that. But it's the moments where you need someone that it's a big struggle. And where it's like you don't have anyone to unleash on. You don't want to unleash on Danielle because it's like you're
Yep.
battling these inner demons. You'll get through that. You don't have to, you know, you don't have a close group of friends, and the friends that you do have, you're not going to bitch and complain because they're not going to listen to you and they're going to tell you to, you know, suck it up.
Yep.
And at the same time, you know, therapy in general doesn't have this like overly supportive culture behind it, but it's even less supportive in the male side. And a good friend of mine struggled with depression for years, and he tells this story about how he randomly met a therapist. Like they were at a restaurant and he overheard my friend talking to someone and could tell that he like was battling something. And not because he was talking about it was just like the way he just knew. He could tell that what he was talking about, there was something deeper to it. And the guy handed him his card, and my friend like kind of like secretly went, and then, you know, him and I have a great relationship, and he started telling me about it. He was like, dude, it's changed my entire life. And I didn't realize what therapy was or what it did or what I needed to do. And like I you know, I've been not in and out of therapy, but like I've talked to therapists on and off. And my biggest struggle is always I feel like I go in there and I just like complain. These are all the things that are pissing me off. This is what I can't stand when this person does that and this and I struggle to understand like how to approach it in a way that's constructive. And for me, you know, because I'm not super organized, like I'm not a guy that just like organizes things like right in front of him. But if someone says, here are the 6 things you need to do, I'll do that. And I'll go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll nail them. So for me, like when the most successful times I've worked with a therapist is when they're giving me these like actionable items. And it's like
Well, and I
why I
think
like
that really comes back to like finding that right person, right? Because just like in friendships, if you're not with that right person, then you're not going to get the benefit out of it.
Very true.
And the consistency of it. So yeah, of course, when you first started therapy sessions, what would I all I talked about was like how stressed out I was, and I cried every single session, literally for like a year. Every time I get in there, I'm like a disaster. And now when I'm going in, the likelihood of me crying is very small. But
'Cause you've
it's
done the
that
work.
consistency of like getting past that point of me feeling
Yeah.
like all I do is go in therapy and cry.
right.
So like that consistency, just like working out. When people are like, I work out and I'm not seeing the result. Well, that's because you got to keep doing it.
Right.
Same thing.
It's and what you guys said earlier, it's, you know, you have to keep going. You don't it doesn't stop. And that's what I think a big mistake is that, like, you know, Michael, I think you said it, is you stopped because you felt like you checked all the boxes.
Yep.
It's like, okay, well, like, hey, I've went to the gym for 2 years. I'm in great shape. I'm done. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're not. Like, this is health. Like, this is, you know, mental and physical health. You know,
Yep.
like you have to continue to maintain it.
Yeah,
We
this
live in a
isn't
world-
something that you beat and you're like, got it licked, I'm good.
Right.
We live in a world of immediacy. Anything you want, you can get on Amazon Prime sometimes within hours. Social media, we just want the likes, we want the comments, we want the engagement. I think that we've in the past 10 years really been, not everyone, but you get what I'm saying. Like as a culture, the remote, you know, kind of, we've been. I don't know what the word I'm looking for.
In the world of now.
We're in the world of now and in immediacy. We've been wired. That's what I was trying to say. We've been
Yeah.
wired to think like, oh, I need it now, whether it's a result, whether it's success. I mean, I had it too. 2 years in business. I'm like, man, I don't have any of the toilet I want. You know,
Mhm.
I want this other car, just thinking of all these things, material things that I don't have yet, but I see everybody else on Instagram that does what I do that has it. But what I didn't see and what people don't see is the 5 or 10 years prior to that of the work
Yeah.
that was put in. So it's you have to be consistent, and I see it with exercise, with diet, and when I truly devote myself to a particular piece of work, that I need to do. Like if I pull back, that's where the failure happens. You have to
Mhm.
be consistent and keep after it. And there are going to be off days. You do need to unplug, you need to uncheck, but overall, be dedicated to what you're doing and keep at it. The results will happen.
I mean, Nick and I say that all the time, even with business. It's not, everyone wants now. They want success now. They want the trucks now, the employees now,
Yep.
the business now, and it just doesn't work that way. And it's no different. Where if you want a successful business, you can't build that business and then walk away and expect it to kind of remain on that same trajectory. Same thing with your network. It's like you always need to be questioning things and modifying things and evolving. And that's mental health, that's business, that's your network, whatever it may be. It needs constant attention.
Yep.
And especially mental health, especially with, like you said, that we've been groomed and wired that we need to be better now, and putting kids on medicine and drugs and alcohol and everything else, where it's like, hey, this makes me feel better right now. But all of those shortcuts, somebody who goes to the gym and wants to put on a ton of mass right away and gets on, some sort of performance enhancing drugs. And it's like that,
Like
those
the
are
Liver
all
King?
just shortcuts. Yeah. But like, it's all just shortcuts, that's not sustainable. There's
It's
going
true.
to be a negative side effect of that. And it is the people who kind of sustain and last the duration are the people who don't take shortcuts and just constantly put the work in.
Yep. And that's a good point about shortcuts, because it's not just about, again, with your body, but every time, and I don't know if you do it, but I'm sure you've done it 100 times before, that one time in a week or a project where you try to take a shortcut, that's the one that
Oh,
costs
yeah.
you the most,
Yeah.
most time,
Your
most
own,
money. Take the time, get ahead of it, communicate thoroughly, be transparent. Like, yeah, clients may be upset for a moment, but you're not going to cost them a ton. You're not going to cost yourself a ton. Like, just do it the right way. I think it just transfers into every aspect of life.
what were you
So-
going to say, Nick?
No, I was just I want to again circle back to the business and going from that first basement job and leaving the ad agency and going into this as a design build business. What was that? What were the first years like? What did the first year look like? And Danielle, you kind of alluded to the fact that I didn't go to school for this, but I have a knack for it. And when you said that, it seemed like I don't want to say you were saying it in like a defensive way, but I know that you probably get some flack for that, as some people in that world will give.
Yeah.
So thinking about the first couple of years in business, from feeling like you were on a high to starting your business, like what was that first 2 years like for you guys?
Wild. I think that a lot of it were, the immediate struggles that you deal with, just battling yourself of, um, uh, oh, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like when you think you don't belong and you
Oh, like an
are,
inferiority complex.
yeah, totally. And having that and believing in,
Imposter syndrome.
yeah, imposter syndrome for sure. And having that feeling of, I'm really good at what I do, or I know what I'm doing. For me, I definitely coming from an education background and believing education is so important. That was a major challenge for me to move forward on that. I didn't have that actual degree in this, but I actually did. People were willing to pay for what I was doing and what I was putting out there. To then trying to have that balance of like, we went into this so we could spend more time with our kids. Oh wait, all we're doing is working.
Yeah.
To trying to figure out like, can we afford to hire an employee? But if we
Mhm.
don't hire an employee, can we do more business? Do we do small jobs? Do we do big jobs? What jobs are bringing in the most money? So there was a lot of like, I felt like it was very frantic, but yeah, at the same time, the business kept coming in and we knew that I think ultimately I always just believed that the next thing was going to happen because
Yeah.
everything was always going to work out. I'm a very positive person. You can ask Michael. I believe everything will always work out.
I was just talking about this with D this weekend. Like, just with November in general has just been wild. Went to the summit, went on the cruise, which I somehow forgot about in the first moment of this. But for all
Spoke at a
these,
conference.
spoke at a conference for the first time, which was a huge builder for us. We just hired somebody else. They're starting in January. Like, we're getting on a new payroll system. Like, all these business things. We signed our biggest project we've ever done and broke ground on. Like, all of these things are happening. And because we've hired a great team and we've delegated a lot and we're very transparent on expectations, it has freed up more of our time to focus on the deeper work, focus on the growth, the marketing, the strategy. The first year was super exciting because we had to do all that. And we're working for ourselves. We had this money coming in. Even though we didn't know if we were going to be able to pay our bills or whatnot, we always made the mortgage on time. But it was exciting and it was stressful at the same time. And I think my biggest struggle truly was imposter syndrome. Like, I'm used to working in a corporate setting. And now I'm a contractor. I'm a builder. Am I going to get the respect of the trades that we're hiring? Here they see some young dude who's just starting out, and yeah, I had a nice truck and tools and whatnot because I was making a lot when I bought that. So I kind of was in fear mode of, are they going to take me seriously? Is basically where I was at. Well, now clearly we're being taken seriously because we're in our 5th year and it's been good. But
I mean, you also have to battle internally that you invested how much time of your life into education and pursuing a specific career, whether it's undergrad, master's degree, and then you're in that field for how long, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Not only do you have to completely change direction, but now you're dealing with, hey, I just invested all of this time and money and effort into something that I'm just, leaving behind at this point, and that's got to be tough.
I think that by the time that we had, at least for me with education, I had already been out of education long enough that I was ready to move on to something different. And the education system in itself, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
that could be had. I wasn't looking to go back into that. But looking at our story now backwards, because I always feel like your story makes sense backwards instead of forwards. I am still educating people. I am still teaching people. It's just in a different platform, in a different format. Like, I'm teaching you how to love your home. I'm teaching you how to pick out selections. I'm teaching you that you do have style. I'm teaching all of those things to our clients in a different way versus like little kids.
So
You?
what do your projects look like today? You said you're breaking ground, so obviously you're doing a build. Is it mostly renovations? What's your kind of customer base look like?
So we specialize in residential remodeling, mostly all interior. We're starting to touch some exterior. A big goal for 23 is to lock in our first custom build, like from the ground up. It's something we've been talking a lot about and something I want to do. It's just finding the right partner to help bring that to fruition from obviously a financial point, like a client. But right now, really this past year is transformed where we were doing like a kitchen, and then it opens up. We're doing all the flooring, all the, moldings and stuff to tie it in together. But now our last couple projects is basically full home remodels. So the one we just locked in before all the travel craziness happened it's a more of a historic home in downtown Plymouth. It's not officially historic, but it's 115 years old. It's being demoed right now. Full house, 2 floors. It has a boiler system that's getting ripped out, doing a full 2-stage HVAC system. Everything's zoned. It has knob and tube. All that's coming out. So full new electrical, all new plumbing. So we're taking everything down to the studs and floor joists and rebuilding it from the ground up. And we've done aspects of that on different jobs, but to do it all on one project, it's a huge undertaking. But this one is, I don't know, I'm just kind of calling it like our Michelangelo. This is going to be the one that really puts us on the map for showcasing like what we can truly do. And we've done some amazing projects. We elevate every project to the next level. With every one we get better. But this one's special, not only because it's our largest from a square footage standpoint, it's our largest financial that we've brought in, but it's the one that our entire team is super, super pumped about. And our
Yeah.
clients really psyched about it too. All of our subcontractors are pumped too.
And the
So,
client's from Chicago. Just
so when you think about like when you think about the advertising aspect of this and the marketing and the content, like, are you looking at this job with a completely different strategy? Or I guess that question could
Yes.
be asked about like every project that you do. Are you guys sitting down and putting together a strategic plan as to how you're going to document these projects?
We are, and
this one definitely
Yeah.
more so than anyone, because this is the next level
It
of where we're
aligns,
trying
right?
to go and trying to push the clientele that we're looking to draw in. And so because of that, that's definitely huge on our radar.
And
So what does
actually,
that look like? What does that look like from, you guys sign the contract and then you sit down and you're like, all right, we need to create content around this. What does that look like? Like, what is that? Is that a meeting? Is that jotting notes down? Is that just winging it? I know how we do it, and
Yeah.
we talked about it for an hour this morning, about like what we're gonna be planning to change. So I'm always curious at like how people approach someone like you guys that are consistently blogging, consistently putting out content, how you're strategizing, how to hone in on, this particular job that helps you again elevate to that next level.
this actually came up a couple months ago, and we use you as an example on this, Nick. I think you do a great job of capturing specific elements of a job as it's in progress. And that's been a struggle for us, is showcasing on our feed like an in progress content of a project. Traditionally it's always been edited photos, final reveals. But with the industry the industry took a hit and things are taking a lot longer right now. We used to be able to bang out a kitchen in 6 weeks. Now it's like we're looking at 6 months. So
Right.
it's more the behind the scenes storytelling, and this will be the first project we really do that from the start. We already have shared some demo content. We're going to do more of one of us being in front of the camera, similar to what you're doing on a weekly basis, but really pinpointing certain aspects of a project that we think it's important for our clients to know. We actually had a meeting on Friday with one of our painters. His name is Blake from On the Wall. Paint is a bit of a struggle. It's a big number for us when we have somebody like Blake do it, because he's an artist at what he does. But it's getting into the conversation quicker, not just from a content perspective, but really from a strategic perspective and sales perspective to our clients, is bringing someone like him into the conversation with a client, talking about not only the color theory of the project, but why things are pricier, why we're choosing a certain paint in a bathroom that has a vapor barrier and no streaking because of the way the chemical compounds, why we're recommending this or that throughout the entire space. Then you get a client bought in. It's not just flipping a number over to them that's 10% of the total project or 20% in paint, whatever that number would be. It's the experience that we're bringing the clients through, moving forward, not only through content, but really that dialogue with our partners to get them really excited and get them to understand why we're recommending and doing certain things.
But with the audience of the content, we're really focusing on the storytelling of
Yeah.
how are we going to keep bringing you back to this story so that you're feeling like essentially you're on an HGTV show, but we're showing you it in real time and
Yep.
how long
Right.
it actually takes to
It's
make this
so
project
funny
come to
because like
reality.
those are two totally different verticals, like in information. And it's something that's exactly what we talk about, where, our site visit series is very much like the process, the things that we're doing, why we're doing them. And it's exactly what you just said, Michael, is that, especially like people need to understand what it takes to do it correctly.
Exactly.
And why it's done a particular way, and ultimately they can value paying a higher price for something.
Yep.
Where it's like, no, like, that this roof is super complex, and now I understand why it's complex, and now I understand why it cost me this much money.
I mean, this
Or
just comes
Especially
down to the transparency, just like
Yes.
with your line item budget,
Right.
where if you want to be fully transparent, you want people to understand what's going into the cost of that project, you have to show the process.
Exactly.
And I think that when we came back from that first summit, Nick, and we really had learned how you were doing that in your squares and showing your audience, it really opened our eyes to that. That was one of the main pain points what we were having with clients, where they would only see the end results. And
Right.
so, yeah, I can make a tiny little part of this studio. Like this section right now you see is beautiful. If I show you over there, not so much. But like, that's the reality, is that we needed to do a better job of storytelling the full scale, and also showcasing that like construction is dirty
Yeah.
and messy.
It's
And
dirty
it's not
and
as clean as you want it to be.
it's not as fast as you want it to be.
There is no perfect. Like perfect doesn't exist in the world. And so we wanted to showcase what quality looks like versus perfection.
Right. And that's something
that
we
has kind of changed our game and what we're doing in our strategy of any of these new projects.
and pairing that with the story is incredibly smart. Where it's
Yes.
like
And I think
there's got
I was just going to say, I think that everything on a project to do it right, every line item is going to be high. Like that's just the reality. You can't save on mechanical, you can't save on plumbing, you can't save on electrical. Like it's that, and then the understanding that demo happens quick. Getting to your final rough-in inspection once insulation's in, that is a long process. And sometimes the project could sit for a few days because nobody's there, because their schedules are jammed too, or electrical got done quicker, or the inspector's booked so he can't come back. There's so many variables that we cannot control. The thing we can control is how we communicate it, how we document it, how we tell the story, and hopefully avoid some of those painful conversations with future clients and their projects.
And I mean, something you saw in Huntington, it's like that emotional roller coaster that Brad shared. I
We've
mean,
been
it's
using that.
it's so
It's
true
truth.
because there's so many exciting parts of a project, and that's what we showcase. That's what we talk about.
Yep.
It's everything is always like, from a sales tactic, let's talk about all the good. Let's talk about all the good. But okay, that's fine. But what happens when it isn't good? And when you don't set that expectation, you're completely bound by the fact that now they're frustrated. Where it's like, if you had communicated, hey, there's going to be this point in the job that you might be frustrated with me. Let me explain to you as to why you're going to be frustrated and why it's going to be frustrating. So hopefully when we arrive at that destination, you guys understand, and it's easier to kind of take. It's not this surprise.
If you don't show all of that and articulate all of that through your content and through documenting this process, and then you hire a customer and all of a sudden this is all news to them, or like, we didn't understand there would be these hiccups, these delays, then it's like, all right, well, you sold me something that wasn't a reality. You hid something, you pulled the wool over our eyes, where if you document that and you show that and show your resolutions for that, then when that does happen, that does come to fruition, because it's bound to, things are going to take longer. There's going to be mistakes. Things are going to be more expensive. I think then your customers are much more willing to accept that, being that you are pretty much upfront with documenting that throughout the process.
Absolutely. And I think that's the importance of a true pre-construction process, and really dialing that in. Coming out with the emotional roller coaster on your first of a couple meetings is not a good idea. You bring that out once you have a space plan, once you have your estimates back, and you're presenting a full proposal, they're bought in. Then you start going through, well, here's what that process is going to look like. Go through the whole process. We also want to share with you what we call an emotional roller coaster, and we go through the whole, ups and downs, peaks and valleys of that. But yes, agree.
More valleys.
Yeah, more valleys. But the reward,
I think that it's
going to be an amazing place.
To interrupt there, I think that there should be this like integration with like Drizzly, that when it hits a really deep valley, like it automatically ships a bottle of wine.
I'm
Just
here.
like, first
Sure.
meeting that you have, like, it's like when you walk in a hotel and they ask you, like, what kind of candy you like. And it's like this, they're just like sparking up conversation. And then you go up to the room and your candy's just magically on the pillow, right? It's like you just get that information, write it down real quick, and then just like, all right, now we know what their favorite wine is. But
Yep.
it is, the point, like the whole point of that process is to set that expectation. But what you just said is incredibly important. You don't want to lead with that.
No.
It's like, hey, by the way, you're gonna hire us. You're gonna hate us like 60% of the time. This is gonna cost more than you want it to, and it's gonna take longer than. It's like, wait a second, like none of these, all of these are red flags.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
In the end, amazing.
You're gonna love it.
We do address a couple things, like on our website, we have a contact page, we have a form that needs to be filled out. It's very detailed based on like what service you want, what your budget is. And people do try to get around it, and they'll be like interior design only, which is, I think right now it's a 10K minimum for interior design. And then when they write their message, they want to have their kitchen gutted. They know there's a load bearing wall. It's like that's actually not design. That's a big project. But even if clients or potential clients fill it out correctly, that is the time right away where we say, listen, what you're describing here is definitely not a $100,000 to $150,000 project. What you're describing is more upwards of 3+. Like, what is your all-in budget? What are you looking to accomplish in the space? And that gives the opportunity for them to either say, wow, I didn't know that. I can scale this back. We still want to do a consultation with you. Or they say, oh, my budget's not actually 50, it's actually 300. And we've had that happen numerous times, but we, from the jump, as transparent as possible before we even let them know what our in-home consultation looks like, what the fee is, when we can book it. Like, it's just getting ahead of everything right away, because that's either going to turn into an opportunity for us, or it's going to have to be something we decline because we physically and financially cannot pull it off.
So when you guys have customers coming to you at this point, right, you're a few years into business and you've kind of built up your social structure and your kind of developed what you want and who you want to market to, what do you think your customers are hiring you guys for right now?
Beautiful spaces.
Nothing else, just beautiful spaces.
Just beautiful spaces. No,
I think that a lot of our clients are hiring us because they feel like they actually know.
So it's like for you
that they're hiring Clark and Aldine because of Michael and Danielle Gutelli.
Yeah.
And that they feel this connection between the two of us, and then they're loving the aesthetic that we're pulling together and the customization that comes with each project. That's my take. What's your take?
I mean, I think so. We've spent, I don't know, 9 years at this point in some way, shape, or form producing content, whether it's written form or it's visual form. We've done a decent job at storytelling throughout that process. And we're not just, and you guys do it well too. It's like, we're not just a construction company you're going to research on Angie. I think it's rebranded Angie now, and call them because we can get something done. Like, we're not just a design build, we're a brand. And I think our prospective clients and our repeating clients come to us because we are a solid team. We are a brand. We're not just a service provider that you call when you have a leak or you have a wall that needs to be repaired. This is a pretty intimate process, and our platforms we've gotten intimate on those and let people into our lives and know our story, know our team story. So I think it's all of that combined when they're researching. That's what they're looking for, and when they find us, hopefully it works out and we can do the project for them. I do think it's a very personal decision.
Yeah. So as you guys grow and you've scaled your business some, how have you managed that aspect of it? And how do you kind of continually see yourself managing that aspect that you're going to have to pull back some, right? So they're coming to you, they're hiring you and your personality, and before it was self-performing, which may or may not be of value to them. But as you grow more, what's that evolution look like where you guys are kind of peeling back some and taking on different duties, and maybe your personality isn't as prevalent on the day to day?
It's a really good question, something we've had to address this year. We had one client in particular who got super upset with Danielle and myself and unfollowed us from social, just wanted nothing. We were at punch stage. We were punching everything out, wrapping up, ready for final payment, and they just went berserk. And the reason being, we found out, is because they felt like they hired Danielle and me. They did not hire Clark and Aldine. They hired the two of us to do their job. And I wasn't there every day. Danielle certainly wasn't there every day. She's just not, swinging a hammer and doing physical labor. But our team was. And even though they'd get the same answer from Matt as they would get from me if they, went back channel and reached out, they felt like they needed to hear it from us. They needed to see us on site. So in that early stage, as clients are asking us usually during the consultation, like, what are next steps? How does the process work? We let them know right away, like, we are a team. We're here for the initial stages. We're here the whole time, but there will be times where we're more heavily involved. And when we peel back, once a project is taken off, our PM leads the day-to-day communication. We're brought in as need be. We're pretty much CC'd on everything. But they're not going to hear from us as consistently as they hear from our team. So it's setting that tone right away.
From that example that Michael gave, that really just gave us an opportunity of how are we restructuring and how are we basically setting clients up so that they can understand what our process looks like, and that you're not going to hear from Michael and I directly, and really setting those boundaries with clients. And boundaries are difficult for everybody, but keeping those boundaries where they are, and redirecting clients to the correct path.
Yep.
So if they're emailing us, sending that email off back to the correct path of where they should be going. Or if they're texting when we need them to be emailing, again, redirecting back to, hey, thanks for the text. I'm going to follow up with an email so that we can properly document this.
Yeah.
So
Right.
just redirecting that path, and just again, being as upfront as possible and being as direct as possible, because what we found in the times that we have maybe failed or haven't done as great of a job is that we weren't as direct as we should have from the get-go.
Yeah. It's kind of
and then
us.
we were backtracking.
It's trying to be, nice about it, make them feel like everything's going to be great, this beautiful experience, when in reality, what we've started doing is just being more transparent and honest that not everything's going to be fantastic. There's going to be those moments where it's not great.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a struggle, right? You guys have taken like the evolution of your business from the first blog to kind of, Michael leaving work and rebranding. It's always been very personal. It's been you two and your family involved. So I think that the difficulty of that is that when you are selling your personal brand. And even though, right, it's not your names, you guys are the face of your brand right now. And I think that that's something that Nick ran into when he started growing and he wasn't on the job doing the work, and people wanted Nick on the job. And I don't see it that way anymore with Nick. I think that Nick's done a good enough job of clearly communicating that he has a team behind him, even though it's still NS Builders. And I think that he kind of evolved from that more hands-on personal brand and hasn't lost any value there and hasn't really lost the touch, but has been able to kind of evolve his business moving in that direction without necessarily losing the customer that he wants, because it is really hard. And you have to think of it from a customer's point of view, where you're hiring somebody and you feel as if you're hiring those people, and then somebody else shows up day to day and you're like, well, that's not what I thought. And then they start questioning everything. So I think the marketing shift, look at like Studio McGee and everything else. They're not doing a 100th of what's going on in that company on the day-to-day interactions with customers, but they've created a brand that they understand their team can handle what they need to, and people are still hiring them.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I think that is something that we've really started to, in our storytelling, work towards, is showcasing that there is a team behind us and it's not just the two of us that make all the magic happen, and just being as transparent with our audience. I mean, we even talk about that all the way down to like who helps us with our children and how we're able to, I mean, both our boys are homesick today and my parents have them right now so that we
Mm.
can do this. Like things like that. Because nobody can do everything by themselves and you need the help to move forward.
Yeah, and on our site, you know, and that's something that was important, is putting our team on our site. So everyone under our About Us page, it's about Danielle and myself and the brand, but then each one of our employees, their pictures up there. There's a write-up about them, very personal. Pardon me. It's not just Matthew Kubat, general contractor, or Leslie, interior designer. Like, we actually have a write-up that everybody sent some personal things, and we tweak the copy. And it's, again, more of tongue-in-cheek approach, very, very personable, making it a little bit more fun. But we do have touch points in pre-construction where our team is there. Like if we're going out and doing a field measure, it's usually Matt, myself. Katie, our project manager, is there. When we're bringing in vendors for cabinetry or flooring to just do a triple measure, Leslie and Danielle might be there. And so our clients, whether they're living in the house or not, they know who's going to be in attendance. So early on in that process, we're getting them familiar with our team and really our family, because that's what we are here. And the more that we've done that earlier on, the better the process has been. And our clients don't feel like they just hold a relationship with us. Our clients are developing close relationships with our team.
Yeah, I think that, and that's why I kind of asked you what do you think your customers are hiring you for? And it's probably a personal level right now. And I think that when you start having customers hire you as you guys being the visionaries there, where you're not necessarily the ones executing, where they understand that, I think that's you guys are going to hit your stride and be like, okay, we've properly marketed and kind of established the business plan in the direction that we want to go, where now it's like Michael and Danielle are the visionaries behind this company and their team's going to knock it out of the park. But it's all very soon for you guys.
Yep.
Like all this stuff takes time.
Now. Thank you.
Yeah. I have two more quick things that I want to touch on. One, what's up with the sneakers?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So like this is coming from somebody, when I get new shoes, I intentionally go out and scuff them up so that they like.
Oh, so you mean
nobody,
like that pair back there that he doesn't even wear?
Well, it's like I don't want people to know that I have new shoes on. So if I get new shoes, I make them look old immediately.
I've always been into shoes. And it goes back. My parents sent me to a private Catholic school in St. Louis, like Boston. St. Louis is Catholicism huge there. I think those are the two major cities in the U.S. where that's true. So we had a dress code, had to wear dark shoes, and my mom would only get me one pair. And kids had Jordans, they had pennies, they had Reebok pumps, and then I had either just Adidas Zambas or some Asics or something like that. And I could never get more. I always wanted more shoes. It was like a big thing with the kids in my school. So once I started working and making my own money, I was buying, the latest. When Nike Shox came out, I had every color in low top. I had every color in the high top, and don't have those anymore. Now I've moved on to Jordans and all kinds of stuff. My collection's pretty wild, but it is part of me. I've tried to scale back many times and just say, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to buy shoes. It's a passion for me. I love kicks. I don't spend a ton of money on clothes. I'm pretty just basics, I guess you would say. But my shoes is where I speak.
Have you spoken to your therapist about this?
Yes, he supports it 100%. But also the shoes are actually a big talking point with a lot of our clients too. Like when we go to meetings with our clients, like that is usually a topic that comes up. Like, oh, I haven't seen those yet, or oh, those are really dope. Like,
it's funny, man. Like that is very much a thing, and we've talked about it on the podcast here. And if you, I don't know if you guys follow Ryan Pineda, but he talks about he just bought 3 watches this past year, and to the tune of like $130,000 in watches. And he talks about yeah, I mean, that's a luxury watch. Not everyone can afford that. Very few people can afford that in their entire life. But he's bought them because, number one, he can afford it, but it also leads to incredible business. And it's like when
Yep.
you're wearing a nice pair of sneakers and like you open up a conversation, maybe that guy's a sneaker guy too. That stuff. I mean, I'm not saying everyone has to do that or like go out and like get something fancy just to appease to their potential client. But there
I agree.
is, like, as you level up and you're trying to go after a higher clientele, what you dress like, what you drive, those things do matter. And and it's usually a nice, easy icebreaker where it's like if you show up in kind of, ratty clothes and a ratty truck and then you go to
Yep.
sell a $1 million job, it's like, all right, man, like you're starting at a really low tier. Like, how are you going to bring me all the way up to this sale?
Yep. And I think it's understanding your audience, understanding your own growth too. Like,
Yeah.
a great example with the watch. My 40th is coming up. A big thing I always said I wanted was a Rolex. I don't feel yet that I've hit that point yet where I can justify it and be like, you know what? I'm gonna celebrate this moment and I'm gonna remember this. My 40th just isn't that. So I'm looking at something that may or may not have 4 wheels. I'll text you about that later, Nick. But I think it's whether, it's shoes or you get into the watch or car, whatever it is, it's not about the possessions. It's about owning who you are. And when I
Yeah.
talked earlier about that first year when I started like having that imposter syndrome, wearing Jordans onto a job site, it was like, I can't do that. I have to have work boots. So I'm going to wear some Timbs instead of, red shoes, Red Wing shoes, whatever. I felt like I had
Red
to.
shoes.
Red shoes, guys.
Ronald McDonald.
Red bottoms. No red
Yeah.
bottoms on the
Some
job site.
Lubies. Wear the Louboutins. But I honestly did. I felt like I couldn't be myself. I had to portray a builder. I had to have the flannel shirt. I had to have the boots. I had to have the denim. And eventually I realized like that's not what our clients are coming to us for.
Yeah.
They're coming to us for us. So I have to be myself. And I've gotten plenty of commentary from trade partners that we work with on like wearing those on a job site. But it seems like every time that we're in demo, I end up pulling out a new pair of shoes, like knowing I'm going to this, but not thinking about it. And then I get there, I'm like, oh, these are gonna get dirty. But whatever.
I can relate to the shoes when you were little. My family would like not spend money on shoes, so they were big on buying them at least a size big. They were really like, I guess I'm 36 now, so 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they would buy fake Converse, and I'm like, Converse now are,
the cheapest.
$40.
Yeah.
Like, how much money were you saving? It was like the Converse, and it just had the white circle. There was nothing in it. They're like fake teeth. Or then we would usually get the stuff that was cool like 2-3 years later, like the LL Bean backpacks with your initials and the reflective band. We got them. I was in like 7th grade when we got them, and everyone else had them in like 3rd grade.
Yeah.
So you get them at the bargain outlets.
And Eastpak bags, and you're with the LL Bean.
Yeah, it's like they moved on. But shoes are a big deal growing up. I can definitely relate.
See, I mean, maybe I was on the same team as you guys. Like, sneakers were never a thing, and I didn't know anyone that had multiple pairs. We had the same thing. We would get a new pair right before school started, and that was it.
Yeah, that's all you get.
And now, like, I put my kids' shoes on. They're like, "No, I want the other ones." I'm like, "All right," and I grab the other. No, not those ones. The other ones. I'm like, "How many pairs of sneakers do you
your
guys
kids
have?"
are like octopus.
Oh
Like-
my
Like
gosh,
8
my
feet.
boys are awful.
Indy,
so bad.
when Indy, I mean, granted, we have a friend that works for New Balance, and she had given us a bunch of these, like, I don't think they were even sold, but they were like, they fit her feet. They were tiny. She had 15 pairs of sneakers. She was 1 year old. And she was like, no, where are the all white ones? I'm like, she's learning to walk in 15 different, yeah.
So if you want to do an intro, I'd really appreciate it.
I will.
All right, and so my fun fact that I was kind of digging up on Danielle is that, and this could be wrong, this is obscure information, but you ran a few marathons.
I did.
One being how far along pregnant?
24 weeks.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
impressive.
Yeah,
With
So
Enzo.
I at least wanted to give you some props for that because
big time.
that's intense. Being
Yeah,
pregnant and training and finding the time while probably not feeling yourself because you're literally growing another human inside your body. But that's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, and Michael did not like that.
I was at every doctor meeting. Like, are you sure this is okay? What's the extreme? What could happen? Is this going to impact him? Like, is he going to come out okay? Is there any issues with potential growth? I just went deep, and I was like, it's okay. We would not clear her
She
if
was
it
like,
wasn't okay.
she's been a runner before this. She's already running 11 miles. And I ran it with my dad and my brother. And in the first mile, it was a Chicago marathon. And in the first mile, I lost my brother and my dad because I don't know what happened. And my dad was like in straight panic. He's like, your mom is going to kill me. I can't believe you lost her. I found out in the next mile. But like Chicago's marathon in the beginning is like very, very crowded.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not exactly sure how we ended up back together. But I stopped to go to the bathroom 5 times. That was my longest marathon because each bathroom break took 15 minutes.
Yep.
But it was probably my favorite
Still
because there
finished
was
under
like
5.
nothing. Yeah, there was nothing. No pressure.
Yeah. Any more marathons in your future?
Never say never.
Yeah, I haven't ran a marathon since then. I actually had hip surgery after Enzo was born and scaled on the marathons down to half marathons. So we'll see.
Yeah. My neighbor hadn't ran, not like she's an avid runner, just more so fitness, and will run as part of her fitness routine. But I don't think she had ran a marathon in like 10 years. She'd maybe done 1 or 2, and she's over 40. And she just did one, I don't know, this past month, a few weeks ago, and got like a PR on the marathon. I was like, that's so sick. Good for you
Yeah.
It's
girls.
just such
Killing
a
it.
commitment. It's
Yeah,
such a
I
commitment
know.
for the training part
I
of
know.
it versus like a half marathon. You don't have to do that. It's not the same type of commitment.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge time commitment and just like the amount of effort that you have to put into that just to be able to run that amount of mileage, like leading up to
And then our
that. How many
body's, like,
miles
freaking
are you putting
crushed.
in? Yeah.
That's impressive.
Cool, you
Yeah.
guys.
Props to you guys, or to
Oh,
you.
thanks. When
And
I
props
was
to
that
props to
pregnant,
you guys. Like everything you guys accomplished. We've chatted, of course, at the summit, but I've never really gotten the whole story and kind of how you guys started this. And it's so cool, but also super impressive that the way that you guys went about it with the blog and just kind of evolved over time. Hearing that, a year ago, whenever Nashville was, not even a year. That wasn't even a year ago, and that you guys have kind of implemented a ton of stuff between Nashville and Huntington, and now coming back from Huntington saying that was even better, that you guys have been head down for the last month. That's exactly why we do it, but to hear it firsthand and to see you guys like continue to elevate is just incredibly cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you for all the
obviously
value
I didn't know your backstory at all. We had met briefly in Minnesota, but it was cool to kind of dig up some information on you guys and then hear it firsthand. And I'm always super impressed with, people taking the risks that you have, being that you had a family and relocating and all of that stuff. So I think that, with the bigger the risks, the bigger the reward. So hopefully things keep
true.
moving forward for you guys.
That's the goal. We appreciate it.
Well, before you go, you need to do an intro for us. Well, for all of us.
what do you want
So
our intro to be?
you can, however you want to introduce, just as long as you say who you guys are and what you're listening to the Modern Craftsman Podcast, you guys can spitball and go for as long as you want. The mic is yours.
All right. You want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, we're Danielle and Michael Gutelli of Clark and Aldine. Welcome
To the Modern Craftsman Podcast.
That's it. That's all I got.
That's perfect. That's all we need.
That's all we need.
Awesome.
We appreciate your time, guys.
No, we appreciate the opportunity. This was this was a big goal for this year, is to get on
Oh.
the pod. And I mean, you guys are the creme de la creme, man. This is, for what we do in our business, this is a spot to land, and I'm humbled by the opportunity, and it's pretty awesome. So can't thank you guys enough.
Cool. We
Our
appreciate
pleasure,
your
man.
time. Get home to your sick kids.
Well,
Or
I know.
yoga.
My
Oh,
kids are
it's
super
over.
sweet when they're sick. I love
Oh,
my kids when they're sick. They're so nice.
I told Michael actually the other day that I liked the other kid when he was sick better, and then the kid that was sick, he was like, "You like him better than me?" I'm like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
I have a
When
feeling it's
they're-
going to hit our entire house by Thursday.
You know what though? My youngest just had strep. My wife left for Vietnam for 10 days on Friday, and like my youngest, I'm at the doctor that she has strep, and knock on wood, the rest of us have been good. So you might be
That's
all
awesome.
right.
I hope so.
All right, guys.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. We
We'll get-
appreciate your time.
We'll definitely get
Thank
you
you,
guys
Doug.
back on because I feel like we could sit here and chat forever. And I feel like there's so much more to talk about. So we'll get that in the future.
Make it
But
happen.
until then, we'll see you guys online.
Yes, sir.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye. Can we leave the studio, or do we got to wait for this to upload? Please stay in the studio
you-
until your recordings are done uploading. All right.
Yeah, you can just
They can what? They can leave and I'll send them a link. So you can leave and Doug's going to send you a link. And what it will do is it will get the rest of your video.
All right, perfect.
Okay, cool.
See you guys.
thank you.
Bye.
See ya. I know Doug was here.
Doug just sits and watches it live, man. If you guys aren't watching this live on YouTube and you're listening to it on the podcast and you want to watch it live on YouTube, make sure you tune into our YouTube channel, the Modern Craftsman Podcast on YouTube. We will be live from 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time till about 5, and we'll be sharing these video and everything live. And then after the broadcast is over, it will get re-uploaded on Monday morning, along with all of the podcast platforms that we are already on. But a nice addition as we close out the year 2022 here. It's been a big goal of ours to be able to broadcast live, so we're doing it now.
And then and we'll confirm this with Doug. He might be able to hear me right now, but the full video will also be released on YouTube Sunday night when the podcast drops, correct?
That's what I just said, Tyler.
Oh, is it? I didn't hear that part.
That's okay. I was like, what's he saying? I'm like,
I thought that you were just rolling with it, freestyling. And I was like, I don't want to forget this part.
No,
You're good.
no, you're good, man. Like, so Sunday night, Monday morning, either way, whenever it hits on the podcast app, it's different for some people. But yes, the full video will be uploaded if you don't catch the live. But make sure you do. If you're interested in watching the live, make sure you check it out. It's cool. You get to you can actually drop some comments in there. If we can get to those comments or questions with the guests, we absolutely will. And appreciate you guys supporting us in all ways. And lastly, if you know the biggest ask we're gonna have for you guys is to share this podcast. If you know someone in our industry, or maybe they're not even in our industry, but can relate to the content that we're talking about, please, please, please share this with them. And because our industry is notorious for being these silos of everyone feeling like they're struggling by themselves. And we started this podcast to be a support structure for them. And if you're listening to this right now, all the way to the end, I guarantee you know at least 7 people that could benefit from this. So do us a favor, help support the podcast, and share it with them.
Yeah. So if there's one thing we can ask you, it'd be to share you just said that, right?
Tyler,
all right. Think we're good.
We're the 2 best friends.
You just looked at me like, what the heck is wrong with him?
And I'm looking at my 6 bottles of wine on my desk like, all right, I'll sit here and let Tyler spiel this again. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Adios.
This podcast is brought to you by Rockwool. I was talking to Doug the other day because we're renovating his house. and he was telling me about something. I forget who. I think it was a conscious builder maybe that said something about if you don't put exterior insulation on your home, then you're basically not living up to the standard in which you should be, which is so interesting because a couple years ago the whole exterior insulation thing, while it's been around for a very long time, has really started to get legs in the residential market. Obviously, we did it on our Rhode Island project. We're looking at it on multiple new projects that we're building now. And Doug's house, we decided to do exterior insulation to get that additional R value. But to think that, it's taken this long to become kind of or making as big of an impact in residential construction as it has is interesting. But to see how fast it's growing and how fast people are adopting it leads me to believe that this is just going to be normal. And for us, we've been using rock wool comfort board on all of the outside of our home, on the outside of all of our homes that have exterior insulation. And one of the reasons is because they're awesome support structure from the technical department. They're able to walk us through, Rhode Island has 2 layers of insulation on there. Doug, we did one. They were helpful to figure out how to attach it, and really just prep for, not only the correct method in which to install it, but kind of setting us up for success to install the future cladding on that project as well. So if you guys want to join their technical team or their technical group, rockwell.com/rclass.
Get yourself a knife.
Sweet.
Doug wants us to do a trailer. Need to make a channel trailer.
Yeah, but can I end the broadcast? No, I can't, right? Do you want us to record the trailer and then send a new one?